On May 26, 2019, something special happened in the Legend of Zelda speedrun community, an achievement unprecedented by anything else ever accomplished. World records have been set and broken, time barriers thought impossible have been shattered, new skips have been found, but this isn't about a new game-breaking glitch or any one world record. This is the story of how LackAttack24 took first place in 13 categories on the Legend of Zelda leaderboard.
1 second. Got him. That is sick. Let's go. What a run. What a run. Easy speed game. What do you know? How about that? How about that? Have a gold world record. Nice 9 plus 35. World record. 4802. Got him.
To properly understand why a leaderboard sweep is a huge achievement, we need to understand the different categories on the leaderboard and why distinctions are made between them. Virtually every game that's speedrun has an any percent category, as this is universally recognized as the anything goes category for speedruns. What this means is that any glitches, tricks, route changing, or out of sequence events that can be used to save time during the course of the run are permissible. There are exceptions to this, as some games have debug menus you can access through glitches that allow you to end the game very quickly, even for a speedrun, so distinctions are made in those cases, like the 80% debug menu category in Earthbound. 80% in Zelda is very straightforward. Time starts when you gain control of Link in the overworld, and it ends when you're standing next to Zelda. Any glitches that help you get to the end faster are allowed, and we will talk about some of the bigger ones later. For the 100% category, you need to complete everything in the game. For some games, this includes collecting all the significant collectibles in the game, like all of the upgrades in Super Metroid, or getting all the Jiggies, Notes, and Honeycombs in Banjo-Kazooie. Sometimes the category isn't called 100%, but has a different name, like in the Mario series, where it's just named after the maximum number of big collectibles, like 120 star for Super Mario 64. A good rule of thumb for this category is that if the game keeps track of an item on a game screen that isn't related to ammunition, it's probably going to be required for the 100% category. In The Legend of Zelda, you're required to get every item in the game, as well as both bomb upgrades, all heart containers, all Triforce pieces, and then defeat Ganon. For Zelda 1, you don't need to explore every map tile or visit every location, and mini bosses that don't lock progression are skippable. Instead, all major collectibles, all non-upgradable, non-consumable items, excluding the magic shield, are required. What this means is that you don't need to pick up intermediate items like the wooden boomerang, but can grab the final version, such as the magical boomerang instead. In The Legend of Zelda, when you beat the game, you get a new file created on the file select screen, one with Link beside it. Starting from this file begins a game mode known as Second Quest. Second Quest has some differences from when you first boot up the game. All the dungeons have been remapped and they occupy different places on the overworld. It includes some difficult route changes with tricky combat encounters, and there's also a new enemy included, which we'll learn more about later. Those are the three main categories in Zelda 1, but there's one more split we need to look at, and we'll get to the other minor categories later as we cover them in future videos. Up+a is a mechanic that affects the game in such a way that it warranted its own categories for when it is used. So most main categories have a split for when it's allowed to be used and when it's banned. Any percent, 100%, and Second Quest all have separate categories for allowing up-a or banning it from runs. In its simplest terms, up+a requires having the second player controller plugged in while playing. If you press up+a, it brings up the continue, save, retry menu you normally see after dying. From here, if you press retry and are in a dungeon, it will warp you to the start of the dungeon. This saves a lot of time backtracking and changes the route for a lot of the dungeons. It saves about 40 seconds at any percent and even more in 100%, but its biggest influence is in Second Quest where it saves about 2 minutes. Now that you have an idea of why the categories are split up the way they are, let's have a look at one of them. The first category we're going to look at is 100% no up-a, as it's the easiest to understand in terms of rules and will help familiarize you with lots of content of the game. There are two glitches you should know about in this run that aren't banned: screen scrolling and block clipping. Block clipping is used in dungeons, and we'll look at it a bit later, but screen scrolling is used heavily in the overworld, especially for this category, where we spend a lot of time navigating the overworld to collect items. Screen scrolling is a glitch that lets you teleport from one side of the screen to the other, and this has a lot of utility in the run, from passing over areas with lots of enemies, warping over rivers, and gaining access to areas by skipping over their intended routes. It's performed by standing 5 pixels from the edge of the map with Link facing towards the edge. From there, you need to press either perpendicular direction on the D-pad for exactly 1 frame. So if Link is facing right, press up or down. If executed properly, Link will turn around in place. Once this happens, walk off the edge of the screen and you will appear on the other side. Screen scrolling has 2 big applications that had to be factored into the route Lack used for the 100% no up-a run that he did. The first being used to access Dungeon 5 by skipping the Lost Hills, and the second is being able to access Dungeon 6 without going through the Lost Woods. And just to show you how powerful screen scrolling is, we're going to have a look at why it saves so much time. Normally when going to Dungeon 6, you need to pass through the Lost Woods, which requires a lot of walking just to get to them from Dungeon 5 in the vanilla playthrough. Since we're going to Dungeon 6 from Dungeon 1, we already saved a bunch of screens over the intended route, but screen scrolling lets us save even more. Instead of going to the lower southwest of the map and walking through the Lost Woods, we can loop around to the northwest of Dungeon 1 and screen scroll across the river. And then screen scroll again, which conveniently puts us beside the shop that sells arrows, and one screen away from the power bracelet which we need for 100% completion. From here, all that's left to do is go down the stairs at the far left, collect the magic sword in the graveyard, and then make our way to Dungeon 6. This route takes 13 screens in total since we make the detour for the magic sword. Whereas, if we had to make our way to the Lost Woods from Dungeon 1, we'd have to travel a total of 19 screens, plus the 5 screens required to navigate the Lost Woods, which brings us to 24, which adds up to a huge time save when using screen scrolling to get around the map. This category has a very rich history, and the current time Lack has wasn't the first attempt he ran at 100% no up A in his leaderboard sweep. Back in the fall of 2017, he was tackling the category, while another runner by the name of Eunos was also competing for the top time on the leaderboard. Eunos had a time of 36:23 when Lack was doing runs, which was using an older route than the run follows today. Lack stuck with that route, ended up with a time of 36:31, which he then lowered a few months later to a 36:24 in September 7th, 2017.
I don't know, man. Might be +1. Man! What a stupid PB.
It wouldn't be until 7 days later, on September 14th, 2017, that Lack would get a record with a time of 36:12. But it would be a short-lived victory, as Eunos came back with a 36:07 just a couple of hours later. As both runners pushed for the first sub-36 100% no-up-A run, Lack would ultimately achieve it on September 24th, 2017, with a time of 35:55, and that's where he left it for the time being. While Lack achieved the first sub-36, Eunos was actively routing a new route that involved a manip for the money-making game, or MMG for short. We will look at MMG in a later video, since its application is in another category, but for now, you need to know that this manip is very useful, and the route that Eunos developed led him to a world record in Second Quest 100% in October 2017. Lack didn't come back to this category until 2019, after getting his 35:55, since he was focusing on lowering other times. So without further ado, let's look at this category in some detail. The 100% category has us go to all 9 dungeons in the game, and they are referred to by the number in which you would enter them in the vanilla playthrough, not the order which they are visited in the speedrun. We're able to do them out of sequence because progression isn't strictly linear, unlike later Zelda games, which lets us have some choice in the order we complete them for the most part. Most of the dungeons are straightforward in how they should be ran, and what pitfalls await any of the runners inside of them, but there is one in particular that's extraordinary for its level of difficulty, and known presence as a run killer in the Zelda community. This is of course Dungeon 8, and Lack was no stranger to the amount of time that could be lost within its depths. Dungeon 8 is very difficult for one reason: it has a ton of combat with tough enemies. In all, you need to kill a Manhandla, 11 Darknuts, and a blue Goma. So let's go over each of these and see why they cause so much frustration and time loss for runners. Manhandla is a very formidable enemy. You might remember him from the Oracle Seasons or Four Swords Adventures, as it largely shares the same characteristics across all 3 games. In Legend of Zelda, it's composed of 4 heads, all of which must be destroyed to defeat it. Each head has 4 HP, which makes it difficult to beat quickly, as the Manhandla attacks by moving around the room and spitting fireballs from the mouths of its head. As heads are destroyed, the speed it moves and the rate it spits fireballs are increased. The easiest way to destroy the Manhandla is with a well-placed bomb, as bombs do 4 points of damage, and if placed correctly, the blast radius will hit all 4 heads simultaneously. In Lack's run, he goes for the quick kill right away with the bomb, dodging projectiles as he tries to get close enough to the center of the enemy. Due to the enemy's random movement pattern, it continues moving to the left, which puts the bomb off center and only kills 3 of the heads. Lack is forced to chase down the remaining head, which results in him taking a shot from a statue, which knocks him back and loses another half second in the fight. Overall, it was a good Manhandla fight, leaving room for only a few optimizations for future runs. Darknuts are in abundance in Dungeon 8, and they come in 2 varieties, red and blue. Both types cannot be damaged from the front, so they must be attacked from behind or the side. They do have differences, however, with red Darknuts moving slower, dealing 1 full heart of damage, and requiring 4 hits of the wooden sword to be defeated. The blue Darknuts move a lot faster, require 8 hits to be defeated, and deal 2 hearts worth of damage, making them the deadlier of the 2. For the route Lack follows in Dungeon 8, there are 11 Darknuts that you are required to kill, and they are unfortunately all blue. They appear between 2 rooms. The first has 5, with 4 fireball statues, and the second has 6, with 2 fireball statues. For the first room, which is just 2 screens north from the entrance, you want the Darknuts to group together so you can dispatch of them quickly. The best way to do this is with a bomb. And if you recall, Darknuts are immune to damage from the front, so if they are facing the blast, they won't take damage, which makes this room all the more difficult due to the unpredictability of their movement. Since these are blue Darknuts, it takes 2 bombs to kill them. And in Lack's run, he had almost perfect RNG, killing 4 of the Darknuts with 2 bombs and hitting the remaining Darknut with only 1 of the bombs, requiring him to finish it with his sword. The next room is just below the second manhandle fight, and it doesn't need to be fully completed when you first go through it, since you need to backtrack after defeating Goma and collecting the magic key. Ideally, what you want to do when you first reach this room is bomb and kill the largest group as you pass through. If they're all grouped up, perfect. Take the time to finish them now, but if there are stragglers, leave them for the way back. Lack managed to kill all but 1 in his first pass through the room. He took 6 hearts of damage, but gained most of the health back from a fairy drop during the fight, which is fortunate since this dungeon has lots of places where stray damage can happen. I mentioned red Darknuts earlier, but you don't actually have to fight any unless they go out of their way to hinder you, and this is because of the glitch I mentioned earlier, block clipping. Block clipping is a glitch that allows Link to pass through the blocks in the dungeon, and in Dungeon 8, there are rooms where you are required to kill all of the enemies in order to despawn a block to progress. These rooms contain the red Darknuts we would have to fight, but since we can use block clipping to pass through the blocks, we don't need to fight any of them unless they aggro onto us. There are 2 methods to successfully block clip. They both require that Link is just under a block so that the top of his hat lines up with part of the block where the color begins to change. Once you're positioned correctly, you can either tap left or right on the D-pad for a single frame, or slash with your sword, then immediately tap left or right if you want to buffer for the trick. Once Link is turned around, walk up into the block, and once he's inside of it, you can walk out the left or the right side. There are 2 rooms we can use this trick to skip fighting the red Darknuts. The first is after the first manhandle fight, and the second is just after fighting Goma. Speaking of Goma, we should talk about her, since she's a huge point of RNG for this dungeon. Goma isn't a difficult boss to defeat. You just need to shoot her in the eye 3 times in order to kill her. The catch is, she closes her eye during the fight, making her impervious to damage until it's open again. When you enter the room, her eye is always open, but there are 3 movement patterns that she can follow. She can begin by strafing right, left, or coming straight down to the player. If you start the fight and she begins strafing, you need to hurry and shoot her 3 times to kill her in 1 cycle. The time it takes to move in line with her leaves a very small window for this to happen. If she comes straight at you instead, you just need to quickly shoot 3 arrows into her eye and end the fight, which saves the most time, making it the most optimal pattern to get. Dungeon 8 kills a lot of runs, due to the high variance the different rooms we went over can give you, with even the best players having plans foiled due to bad RNG. Lack had decent RNG for level 8 on this run. He killed 3 manhandle heads with a bomb during the first fight, killed all but 1 Darknut in the room, leaving him with 1 to kill on his backtrack, and Goma gave him the best pattern, which resulted in him getting a gold split and being even for the first time in the run. From there he saved 3.4 seconds in his 7th dungeon and another 1.8 seconds in Ganon's dungeon, resulting in an overall time save of 5.2 seconds across the run, which gave him a new personal best, and he defeated the previous world record held by Eunos by 2 seconds. But this isn't where Lack's story ends, and this is just the beginning of the categories Lack had to conquer in order to sweep the leaderboard and take all 13 records. In the next video, we'll take a look at the 80% and swordless category.
Oh, thank goodness. Yeah, baby. World record.